Good evening. I really shouldn't be here. By all rights, the 2012 Games should have been hosted in Paris. We should be packing our bags for France right now. It was their third time of asking. The International Olympic Committee is a very Francophile organisation, and they were a dead cert, or so they thought. Why would the IOC come to London? We've got a crap transport system, the weather's even crappier, we've got a particularly intrusive media, and Brits are almost universally detested in sports circles for claiming invention over every sport that has ever been played, and moaning incessantly about being knocked out of World Cup quarterfinals in penalty shootouts. So we went to Singapore in July 2005. Not many people expecting us to come back with the big prize. Why did they vote for London? These two helped. The support of the British government was pivotal in us winning the games. David Beckham did what David Beckham does well, which is smiling a lot, not saying too much, and generally being screamed at by crowds of girls. But Blair really turned on a 48-hour frenzy of lobbying between before Gleneagles. He was hosting the G8 summit, and he flew in and he personally saw about 34 IOC members. They were queuing outside his hotel room to have a drink with him, and he saw probably another 30 as well. And he kind of swung it for us. A Canadian IOC member said just after we'd won that if it weren't for him, they'd be hosting a news conference in French. The politicking that was going on behind the scenes was happening as 2 days before Jacques Chirac flew in. He was a little bit late to the party. This guy helped too. Seb Coe has been evangelical about the Games since he was made chairman, and his speech promising to transform sport, which he delivered to the IOC in Singapore, has set the tone for a Games which has promised quite high ambitions. We'll see whether in 30 years' time it delivers. And while he was giving his speech, the French thought they had it in the bag. That's not that far from the truth, actually. They were sitting in around the hotel pool smoking cigarettes, not cigars, but almost to the point. Anyway, we won. And I mean, this is not I've been covering this subject for 10 years, from the start of this project in 7 years ago, coming up to its culmination in 2 months' time. This is not a definitive chronicle of the key moments by any stretch of the imagination. I've just picked out some points which I think define the main characteristics of this Games, and which point the way to the subjects that we'll be talking about for years to come in terms of whether this was worth it, the cost, the legacy that it claims it will provide for London and for the country, and the tone of the Games that you will see in the next few months. Just how will we celebrate it as a nation? I mean, soon after we came back, I mean, after the 7/7 bombings, obviously happening the day after, which took the celebration out of proceedings, it was quite quickly the British press, certainly, and politicians on opposition benches started to look at the cost. It's often said that a bid book is best work of fiction you'll ever read, which in London's case was very true. I mean, they said that the main stadium would cost 250 million. It's now currently priced at 431. Aquatic Centre, 70 million, 253 is its current price. The Velodrome, 27, it's gone to 86. I mean, the list goes on. Nothing in that bid book bears any shred of resemblance to reality. And the Public Accounts Committee estimates it at the moment at about 11 billion if you take into the real cost. The real costs, 30 years down the line, will probably be, I'd say, probably 20 billion. And they knew this when we bid for it, that there was a government report that was commissioned by ministers, and when the findings came back, that said, actually, you know what, all of this economic, social benefits, pretty much a load of bunkum, and it's just going to have a really good morale boosting, good feel good factor for the country. No other Olympic city has demonstrated things like a rise in sports participation, or even a rise up the medal table. It tends to be that the investment in sport is preloaded, and then after the games that you host, it all comes crashing down. But we went ahead with it anyway, although that report was, as you can imagine, not widely distributed. And lots of, as the economy got worse, the comparisons with the 1908 games started to be bandied around on how that event cost just £35,000 and made a profit. How we could not have any change out of 9.3 billion appeared to be a good question to ask. And during my time covering this, the cost has come back time and time again. I went up to a place called Much Wenlock in Shropshire a few years ago to see how the original inspiration for Baron Pierre de Coubertin's vision, who's the founder of the modern Olympics, he stumbled across this village. It was how these annual games put on by a local doctor who thought that physical activity was good for the soul, particularly of young boys who might otherwise get into trouble. And he took this idea and he went back to Paris, where he recreated the idea of the ancient games in modern times, and the first games were held in 1896. They could not be further. I mean, they couldn't be further apart. I met the local butcher there, a guy called Paddy Ryan, has sponsored the clay pigeon shooting for 20 years, and he said to me, "They've got Coca-Cola, Wenlock's got me." It's basically the whole Olympic movement has, and some people might say, starting to eat itself, and these are just some of the things that have popped up in recent months. Is that all of the promises that were made in Singapore is coming home to roost, and whether we can get kids off the sofa playing sport, or whether they'll just watch it during the games, is a good question. The government doesn't seem to be able to even measure how many people play sport in this country, or what they play. But certainly, by their own measure, since we won the games, only another 100,000 people have actually taken up sport. The target, by the way, was 1 million, which has also been scrapped. The other question was whether or not we can actually deliver big public sector-driven construction projects in this country. Eurotunnel, Wembley, all of these things suggested that we couldn't. And then this is the only time you'll ever read the word train and early in the same headline. When they opened the Javelin shuttle to the park, which will take 7 minutes, it was delivered early. This is the guy that everyone wants to see at the London Olympics, although actually not many people will see him. It's not on here on this slide, but the number of tickets that have been made available to the public actually quite small compared to the number of seats in the stadium, because of all the tickets that need to be put aside for sponsors and for the media, admittedly, and for what they call the IOC family, so athletes' families and people who run sports federations. A big issue for the organisers has been tickets, or the lack of the opaque nature of the ticketing process. A ballot seemed the most fair way of doing it, but the way they've done it has provided has caused a lot of frustration across the board. I meet a lot of people who say that they couldn't get tickets, not for want of trying, or for a willingness to pay unbelievable amounts of money to actually get their hands on them. This was mainly been driven by the fact that the organisers wanted to make sure that every seat was sold. In some cases, they actually sold more tickets than existed. This is how I don't think I've ever sold that many tickets to synchronised swimming in this country, let alone too many tickets to synchronised swimming, but they managed to oversell the event by 11,000 tickets. Those luckily enough to land synchronised swimming in the first instance were able to swap them happily for athletics and other popular events, which they were probably quite happy with. But these games are being managed or micromanaged by the organising committee. If anyone's done a deal with the organising committee, they will know just how controlling they are. This is the committee run by Seb Coe now. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is also a statement of nationalism, really. And Cameron threw an extra 41 million at the Olympic ceremonies to make sure that we didn't produce quite such an embarrassing display as existed in the Beijing closing ceremony, if anyone saw that London bus and Beckham kicking a ball off the top of it. So Danny Boyle, it's all on you, mate. And some of his ideas give me hope. Celebration of the NHS doesn't. That's one of the themes of the opening ceremony, all under the auspices of the Tempest, which is the general theme. And Johnny Rotten has said he won't perform the closing ceremony, which at the Sex Pistols you'd expect nothing less. So along the way, I've seen there have been many light-hearted and funny moments as well. The Olympic clock messing up was reminiscent of the 2012 satire programme, which I'm not sure if you've seen, but Siobhan, the perfect PR, would be absolutely delighted with that one. Basically, my job is to pick holes in this Olympics and to find fault at every level. But I think I'm going to struggle. It's pretty well organised, apart from the controlling aspect. And I was on covered a week of the torch relay, the first week from Land's End to Cardiff last week. And I just took some video from the top of one of the buses on one day. This is a normal working day on a Tuesday in Bradford-on-Avon. And this, I think, in the face of all of the nitpicking that I'm going to have to make over the next few months, I'm going to be doing it in the face of this.
Oh, it's so nice you come to say hello. The torch is very great. Hi guys.
Bradford-on-Avon.
Nice to see you all.
Beautiful town.
The torch is coming.
On a
The
beautiful
Olympic
day.
flame.
The flame was about 2 miles behind us. This was just the sponsor buses. I just witnessed a ridiculous enthusiasm for the Olympics that I hadn't expected, and I went out on that journey entirely cynical and sceptical, expecting to see a man and his dog lining the roads, and more than 1 million people last week came out to see it. For whatever reason, some sort of lemming mentality, I don't know, or but they were, as you see, hanging off rooftops, 20 deep at some points, and I think this is what the Games is going to be like. So it's going to be hard to find fault with it, but it will be a great summer, and I will enjoy it, and we'll ask the difficult questions later.